I think the members already had 4 calls. The members had 4 calls. Stuart Nash.
Mr Chairman, I disagree with what the Minister has said, with all due respect. I think what she has outlined and what is in this bill is actually poor governance. And I'm sorry, but under every single definition, when a Minister has the right to overrule the board, that is not good. But there are excuse me, there are a couple of other things that I would like to just pick up on. 50L, this is publication of social housing transaction. And there's just a couple of terms here that I think we need to clarify so we know exactly what we're talking about. What it says under 50L1, the Minister must, as soon as practical after a social housing transaction is settled. What does as soon as practical mean? I would say in this sort of situation, with this sort of transaction, with such a public good or a public interest component, it should be within 24 hours and present a copy of that notice to the House of Representatives. The interesting thing, though, is it says under 50M, and this is the thing that strikes me as a little hasty, and again, poor legislation, but more than that, poor process. Under 50M Part 1, it says the Minister must give written notice to the corporation or subsidy as relevant of the Minister's intention to enter into a transactional services contract at least 5 working days before entering into that contract. 5 working days? So what this actually says is the Minister has no legislative right whatsoever to tell his or her staff what he or she is planning to do with any sort of social housing contract before a 5 working day period. This may be, the Minister may turn up on a Monday, say to the Chief Executive, I'm signing something on Friday. Goodness me. Now, I just don't think that 5 working days is at all enough to allow any sort of corporation to respond in a way that would allow whatever needs to be transferred or the proper process to go through in any way, shape or form. And it said that the notice must be accompanied by a copy of the proposed contract. Well, hallelujah. Thank goodness for that. Of course it should be. But I can imagine that these contracts, when you're signing away, that when you're selling off state houses or chunks of state houses, would come with a pretty meaty contract. The sale and purchase agreement of a stock standard house requires, well, you get 60 days to complete it before it becomes void, or you need to seek an extension. And what this piece of legislation is saying is that the CEO has 5 days to consider the contract, only 5 days to consider the contract if the Minister is entering into something. That is woefully inadequate. I think it just sets, it really does, it's woefully inadequate. Mr. Chair, I'd also like to go to 50O. And Part 1, this is a very interesting clause, and I'm not too sure why it's here, but what it does do is it says to me is there is a lot of malcontentment, discontentment within Housing New Zealand. It says the corporation or subsidiary must supply to the Minister any information requested in writing by the Minister to facilitate transaction process or to facilitate the implementation by the Minister of a social housing transaction. I agree with you, Mr. Twyford. This is saying, officials, you must obey the Minister. Now, I thought that, yeah, exactly. What this is saying is the Minister doesn't have any faith in her officials to give her or him the right information to make sure this proper process is implemented. So what we must do is actually put in legislation a requirement for the officials to obey the Minister. Now, I speak on a lot of tax bills and this sort of thing. I have never seen a clause in a bill that says the officials must obey the Minister. In fact, I actually believe that's part of the state services contract, and Mr. Bishop would know more about this. Perhaps you can take a call on it. But I would have thought that if an official did not obey a minister or did not give the relevant information that a minister had asked for, then that official would be in really big trouble. But the fact it has to be in a clause in the Act says that there exists a level of distrust between the officials who probably know this is the wrong thing to do and the Minister who just does not trust the officials. If I was an official, I would feel pretty slighted about that, actually, because I really would. The other thing that I want to perhaps ask the Minister a question on is if we go down to 50Q, the rights of delegation. It says the Minister may delegate all or any of the Minister's functions and powers under this part to the Chief Executive of the Ministry. So what that in essence says is the Chief Executive has the power to override the board. Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Oh, Marama Davidson.